My name is Zoe. I'm standing at the podium in the Ridgewood Community Center, looking out at an audience of 200 people. Among them, at the center table, sits my family. They're all staring at me in shock, their expressions a mix of disbelief and horror. It's been 7 years since I last saw them, and the last time was when I walked out of my mother's house with just $200, a suitcase, and the clothes on my back. Let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in a small town called Millfield, population 3,500. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do, and gossip spreads like wildfire. My family was the talk of the town, but not for the right reasons. My mother, Victoria, was a controlling and manipulative woman. She was the queen bee of Millfield, always putting on a show for the neighbors. My father, Henry, was a passive man who always did what my mother said. He never stood up for me, not once. I had a younger sister named Lily. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. Lily was 25 when all this happened, and she just landed a job at a local marketing firm. Meanwhile, I was 22, working 2 jobs to save up for college. I was waiting tables at a diner and answering phones at a law office downtown. Thanksgiving at the Thompson house was always a big affair. There were usually around 15 relatives squeezed around the long table, and my mother would go all out with the decorations and the food. That year, as we sat down to dinner, I could feel the tension in the air. My mother made a toast to Lily, calling her the pride of the family. Everyone raised their glasses, and I did too, even though I felt like an outsider in my own home. After dinner, as the plates were being cleared, I decided to ask my mother a question that had been weighing on my mind for a long time. "Mom," I said, "I was wondering if there's any money left in Grandma Rose's education fund." She told me she set aside some money for each of us. The table went silent. My mother set her coffee cup down slowly and looked at me. "Zoe," she said, her voice sweet but cold, "you've been acting so erratic lately. I've been worried about you." I didn't respond. I just sat there, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, and I knew they were all judging me. I excused myself and went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. As I stood at the sink, I could hear my mother talking to my Aunt Grace in a low voice. Rose's fund went to Lily's car payment and her student loans. Zoe doesn't need it. She's not going anywhere anyway, my mother said. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Grandma Rose had promised me that the money was mine, that it was for my future. I turned off the water and walked back into the dining room. My mother was refilling her wine glass. "That money was mine, Mom. Grandma left it for me." "You had no right to take it," I said, my voice shaking. My mother didn't even flinch. "You're being dramatic, Zoe. You always do this. You always make everything about money," she said. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd worked so hard, saved every penny, and for what? So that my mother could give my inheritance to my sister? I was furious. 10 minutes later, my mother called everyone into the living room. I knew what was coming. She'd done this before, played the concerned mother in front of an audience. "I've tried to keep this private," she said, dabbing at the corner of her eye with a napkin. "But I think everyone needs to know. Zoe hasn't been well. She's been having episodes. I've been covering for her, but tonight, I can't do it anymore." I looked at my father. He sat in his recliner, his eyes fixed on the carpet. He didn't say a word. I looked at Lily. She was scrolling through her phone, not even paying attention. And then I looked at the rest of my family. Not one of them said a word in my defense. I went upstairs, packed a suitcase, and grabbed the small wooden box that Grandma Rose had left me. I'd kept it on my dresser for years, never opening it because I couldn't bear to admit that she was gone. I walked down the stairs and through the living room. My mother's voice followed me to the door. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back," she said. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently because I knew I'd never open it again. Outside, it was snowing. I had a suitcase, $200, and nowhere to go. I bought a bus ticket to Portland, Oregon. It was the furthest I could get for the money I had. The bus ride was long and uncomfortable, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get as far away from Millfield as possible. When I arrived in Portland, I had no idea what I was going to do. I spent my first night at a women's shelter and my second week in a hostel. I had no credit history, no references, and no local connections. But I had a strong work ethic, and I wasn't going to give up. I found a job as a receptionist at a small consulting firm called Summit Associates. It was a small office, with only 8 employees, but it was a start. I answered phones, sorted mail, and did whatever else needed to be done. I worked hard, and my boss, Emily, noticed. Within a few months, I was promoted to project coordinator. I was in charge of managing a small grant application for a community garden project in outer southeast Portland. I worked long hours, but I loved it. I felt like I was finally making a difference. Over the next few years, I worked my way up the ladder at Summit Associates. I enrolled in an online business administration program at Portland State University and paid for it out of my own pocket. I worked during the day and studied at night, and it was tough, but I was determined to succeed. By the time I was 28, I was the project manager at Summit Associates, in charge of a team of 10. The company had grown from 8 employees to 35, and we were working on some really exciting projects. I had my own office, a decent salary, and a bright future ahead of me. But despite my success, I couldn't forget about my family. I knew they were still out there, telling their version of the story, and I couldn't do anything to stop them. For 7 years, I didn't hear from them, not a single call or letter. I tried to move on, to build a new life for myself, but it was hard. Then, 6 months ago, I got an email from my Aunt Grace. The subject line said, "From your Aunt Grace. Please read." I stared at it for a long time before finally clicking on it. In the email, my aunt apologized for staying silent all these years. She said she'd been afraid of my mother, that she didn't want to get involved. But then she told me something that made my blood boil. Grandma Rosa's education fund had been handled by a lawyer named Mr. Harris in Columbus. Rose had left clear instructions that $12,000 was to go to each of us, in separate accounts, with separate signatures required. But my mother had forged my signature, consolidated the accounts, and moved all the money to Lily. I sat there, stunned. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My mother had not only stolen from me, but she'd also lied about it. She'd made me out to be the crazy one, the one who needed help. And for 7 years, I'd let her get away with it. 2 months later, Emily came into my office holding her phone like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Zoe," she said, "I have some exciting news. Pastor Mark Johnson runs a church in Millfield, and he's on the board of a community development nonprofit. They're doing a big fundraiser, and they're looking for a keynote speaker. Someone who works in community development and has a personal connection to small-town revitalization. I recommended you." I almost said no. The last thing I wanted to do was go back to Millfield, to face my family. But then I thought about Grandma Rosa's letter, about the words she'd written to me. She'd told me to be brave, to not let my family hold me back. "Okay," I said. "I'll do it." Emily grinned. "Great. I'll send your bio to Pastor Johnson right away." After she left, I sat in my office and Googled the Millfield Community Fundraiser. The event page listed Victoria Thompson as the committee chair. The venue was the community center on Elm Street, and the date was March 15th. I picked up my phone and texted my Aunt Grace. "I know about the fundraiser. I'm the keynote speaker," I wrote. Her reply came in a few seconds. "I know. I didn't tell your mother. Be ready." 2 weeks before the fundraiser, on a Tuesday afternoon, Lily sat down at her kitchen table and typed my name into Google. She was in a desperate situation. She'd just gotten divorced, and her ex-husband had taken everything. She was drowning in debt, and she needed a co-signer for a new loan. When she saw my name come up as the COO of Summit Associates, she couldn't believe it. She called my mother, and the two of them were in shock. They'd always thought of me as the failure, the one who couldn't make it in the real world. But here I was, a successful businesswoman. That evening, my phone started buzzing. I was in a conference room, wrapping up a quarterly review with my team. I ignored it at first, but then it wouldn't stop. By the time the meeting ended, I had 43 missed calls, all from Millfield area codes. I went to my office, closed the door, and listened to the voicemails. One after another, they all said the same two words: "Help me." Lily's voice was breezy, like she was just calling to catch up. "Zoe, it's Lily. I know it's been a while. Listen, I need to talk to you about something important. Call me back." My father's voice was halting and uncomfortable. "Honey, it's Dad. Your mother and I, well, the family's been going through a rough patch. We could really use your help. Give us a call when you can." My mother's voice was clipped and controlled. "Zoe, this is your mother. I don't know what you've been doing out there, but family is family. We need to talk." I listened to every single voicemail, some of them twice. Not one of them said, "I'm sorry." Not one of them acknowledged what they'd done to me. They just wanted my help. I called my friend Mia. She picked up on the second ring. "My family found me," I said. "Oh," she said. "Which part hurts?" "The part where I'm not surprised," I said. I set my phone to do not disturb. I didn't call back. I didn't block the numbers either. I was done reacting to their drama. 3 days after the voicemails, I got an email from my mother. The subject line said, "Your mother, Zoe. After everything this family has done for you, you can't even return a phone call. I've spent 7 years defending you to people who asked where you were. I told them you were getting help. I protected your reputation. And this is how you repay me. I always told people you were selfish." "I guess I was right," she wrote. I read it twice, saved it, and didn't reply. The next day, I got a LinkedIn message from Lily. "I see you're doing well for yourself. Congratulations, I guess. But family is family, Zoe. I need a co-signer on a loan. It's not a lot. You owe us that much," she wrote. I screenshotted everything. The email, the LinkedIn message, the voicemails. I needed evidence, something to hold on to when I started to doubt myself. The night before the fundraiser, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what I was going to say, about how I was going to face my family. But then I thought about Grandma Rose, and I knew I had to do it. The next day, I flew into Columbus, rented a car, and drove southeast for 90 minutes through flat gray Ohio farmland. When I arrived in Millfield, it looked smaller than I remembered. The hardware store, the diner, the church, everything was the same, but it felt different. I parked my car in the parking lot of the community center and walked inside. The place was decorated like a wedding, with white tablecloths and rented centerpieces. There was a banner across the entrance that said, "Building Tomorrow Together, Millfield Community Fundraiser." I signed in at the registration table. A volunteer, a woman about my mother's age, glanced at my badge and smiled. "Miss Thompson, welcome. Pastor Johnson is so excited to have you," she said. I wondered if she recognized me. I wondered if anyone in this town remembered the girl who'd left 7 years ago. I walked through the doorway and into the main hall. Tables of 8 were filled with the people of Millfield: teachers, shop owners, church members, neighbors. And at the center table, in a red dress with her hair freshly done, was my mother. My father was sitting beside her, and Lily was across from them. They all looked up as I walked in, and their faces went pale. Pastor Johnson stepped up to the podium. "Good evening, Millfield. Thank you all for being here tonight. This fundraiser is about community, about building something bigger than ourselves," he said. "Our keynote speaker tonight is someone who embodies that mission. She grew up in a small town, started her career from the ground up, and now serves as Chief Operating Officer of Summit Associates, a firm that has impacted over 50,000 families across the Pacific Northwest. She was recently featured in regional Forbes coverage of rising business leaders. Please give a warm Millfield welcome to Zoe Thompson." The audience stood and applauded. I stepped out from behind the curtain and walked to the podium. The spotlight hit me, and for a moment, I was back in that living room, listening to my mother tell everyone I was broken. But then I looked out at the audience, at the 200 faces looking back at me. And I saw something I'd never seen before: respect, admiration. "Thank you, Pastor Johnson, and thank you, Millfield. It's been a while," I said. I delivered my keynote. I talked about community development, about the power of grassroots organizing, about the importance of seeing people for who they really are, not just the version of them that fits someone else's narrative. And then, near the end, I shifted. I grew up in a small town like this one. Some of you might remember me. I left this town 7 years ago with $200 in a suitcase. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because staying was costing me something I couldn't afford to lose, I said. The room went silent. I could feel the tension in the air. I was told I was unstable. I was told I needed professional help. The truth is, the help I needed was distance. And this career, this work, it started because someone in Portland looked at me and saw a person, not a problem to manage, not a story to tell at church, a person, I said. I paused. I let the silence do the work. Community development isn't just about grants and infrastructure. It's about seeing people, really seeing them. Not the version that's convenient. Not the version that fits someone else's narrative. The actual person standing in front of you, I said. I didn't name anyone. I didn't point at my mother. I didn't even look at her table. I didn't have to. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering. I looked out at the audience, and I saw tears in their eyes. I stepped off the stage and into the crowd. People I hadn't seen in 7 years shook my hand, hugged me, told me how proud they were of me. My mother cut through the crowd like a blade. She arrived with a smile so tight it looked like it was painted on. "Zoe, sweetheart. What a surprise. Why didn't you tell us you were coming?" she said. I didn't step into the hug. "You had my number, Mom." 7 years, I said. The smile flickered. She lowered her voice, stepping closer. "You embarrassed this family. That speech of yours." I looked at her. I didn't name anyone. If people drew conclusions, that's not my responsibility, I said. Lily appeared at my mother's shoulder. We've been trying to reach you, Zoe. We need to talk about the family, she said. I looked at her. I heard your voicemails, all 43. Not one apology. Just help me. That's not a family reaching out. That's a collection call, I said. My father materialized behind them, his voice low, his eyes on the floor. Zoe, let's not do this here, he said. I looked at him. Dad, you had 7 years to not do this. You chose not to, I said. I stepped back, straightened my blazer, and nodded once to Pastor Johnson, who was watching from near the stage with an expression somewhere between concern and understanding. Then I walked toward the exit. Steady, even, no running, no slamming. I'd done enough of that 7 years ago. I sat in my rental car in the parking lot for 20 minutes. Engine off, hands on the wheel, breathing. Inside the community center, I could see people through the windows, standing in clusters, looking toward the door I just walked through. The Whisper network was running at full capacity. By morning, every kitchen table in Millfield would have a new version of Tonight. I called Mia. It's done. I said what I needed to say, I said. How do you feel? She asked. Like I'm finally free, I said. I drove back to my hotel in Columbus. That night, I opened my laptop and wrote one email addressed to my mother, my father, and Lily. I'm writing this once. I'm not co-signing any loan. I'm not funding anyone's business idea. I'm not angry. I'm clear. If any of you want a real relationship with me, it doesn't start with a voicemail asking for help. It starts with an honest conversation. A real one where someone says what happened out loud and acknowledges it. Not we did our best. Not that's in the past. Not family is family. An apology specific for the fund, for the lies, for the 7 years of telling this town I was in a facility when I was building a career. Until that happens, I wish you well. But my answer is no, I wrote. I read it twice, changed nothing, and pressed send. Then I closed my laptop, turned off the light, and lay in a hotel bed 3 miles from the town I grew up in, listening to Ohio silence for the first time in 7 years. A week after the fundraiser, I called Mr. Harris, the lawyer in Columbus. He was retired now, 82 years old and living in a condo near Dayton. But he remembered. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, he said. She came to me specifically because she didn't trust your mother with those accounts. She made me promise to keep the original documents. I knew the $12,000 was gone. Legally, there was no recovery. But I'd been thinking about what Grandma Rose would have wanted. I contacted Portland State University's financial aid office and set up a small annual scholarship funded from my own salary for students who were estranged from their families. I named it the Rose Thompson Community Scholarship. My Aunt Grace called me 3 days after the fundraiser. She was crying when I answered the phone. I should have said something years ago, she said. You're saying it now. That counts, I said. We talked for a long time. She told me what had happened in Millfield after I left. How my mother's reputation had taken a hit, how Lily had lost the house, how my father had finally stood up to my mother. I'm still not sure what the future holds with my family. My father sent me a letter a few weeks ago, apologizing for his silence. Lily hasn't said a word. And my mother? Well, I don't know if she'll ever apologize. But I'm okay with that. I've built a life for myself here in Portland. I have friends, a good job, and a future that's full of possibilities. And I know that Grandma Rose would be proud of me. If you're still listening, and I hope you are, I want to say something directly to you. If you've ever been in a situation like mine, where you're the scapegoat, where your family only reaches out when they need something, remember this: you're not crazy. You're not ungrateful. You're not selfish. You have the right to choose who you let into your life, and you have the right to say no. The 2 words my family said were "help me." The 2 words I needed to hear were "I'm sorry." They're not the same sentence, and you don't owe anyone the first until they've given you the second. That's my story. Thank you for listening.